raised expectations of connectivity, quality of service and availability of ICTs to enable work to go on in what is now being referred to as a post-COVID world, what we will be walking into. So that brings me to the end of this presentation, and to thank you very much as I look forward to the engagement after this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Wanjao, for that presentation. Ms. Wanjao, Acting Director General for Communication Authority of Kenya. I think she has taken us through a number of issues, what the impact has been able to do, and that's quite a bit they've been able to do. I'm happy that there's been a lot of emphasis on the issue of cybercrime, because going through some of the questions that we received, this seems to be a major concern, particularly for parents and many other people. And it's good that CAK has put a number of measures to address this particular aspect. And of course, we've also looked at the future, what it means to us as a country. So thank you for that presentation. We'll get back with the questions that you might have and the other in advance so that we're able to just clarify a few things that we received. So without taking much time, ladies and gentlemen, allow me now to invite Cabinet Secretary for Innovations and Youth Affairs, Joe Musheru, just to take us through his thoughts about the whole discussion, and also just give us an indication of what the government is doing from a perspective to ensure that we are staying on top of things as far as using technology is concerned.
Thank you.
Against COVID-19. So Waziri, if you can hear me, I welcome you to take the floor and just talk to us about the subject of discussion. Karim.
I can hear you. Thank you very much. And good afternoon, everybody. Let me recognize first Maureen Mbaka from my ministry. She's our CAS. Responsible for ICT, and I have a whole team of people that have come in. Some are even asking what is CARA. I think they need to do a bit more research. There's plenty that CARA has been doing, and obviously I too have been a member of one of the associations over time. Let me say that I also recognize Steve Shege and Mercy, who are within the sector, and they've really elaborated some of the challenges and opportunities that COVID-19 has presented to us, both as a country and even globally. Distinguished guests, at the beginning of the year, we were hearing that there's this virus somewhere in Wuhan, and in fact, the Chinese are locking down this place. And really nobody knew what this virus was, and we needed to prepare just in case. And they started saying people are just dropping. I'm sure you saw on social media videos of people just dropping in the streets and dying, and it wasn't clear what this pandemic was. Globally, before you can even start taking some actions, the World Health Organization has to declare various stages and steps so that countries can then start implementing some of the policies and protocols that So for us as a country, the first thing was trying to even understand COVID-19 and how can we ensure that our citizens are not going to be dropping the way we had initially set up, or the president a cabinet subcommittee, but as time went on, before the first case, which came on 12th of March, he set up what is called the National Emergency Response Committee, which had people from all over government to ensure that we took time, we understood what was in stock for us, what was coming, and we made sure that we prepared. So a lot of the preparation initially was just first understanding what this risk was, looking at where some of the countries have gone wrong and which ones have gone right, and just how to deal with the issues. I'm sure you remember one of the first pushes that we were getting is that we must evacuate all our people from Wuhan and bring them to Kenya. The US was the first to evacuate the people from Wuhan. The US, and you can what is happening in the world in terms of the number of cases. So as government, it is very critical that we look at Hi, am I still there? I think I was kicked out and
I
unmuted.
think it was a technical glitch, but you're now back.
Okay. So I was saying that with those challenges, each country, had to take decisions on which way to go, and a lot of that depended on very scanty information. And I would say that we were having pressure from many people to the things that we need to do as government. But the Emergency Response Committee took time. It included the Council of Governors. We had even people from private sectors, but also the experts in the health sector to ensure that we took care of all the potential problems. The first thing we needed to do was to make sure we have a hospital and quarantine facilities where if we discovered these cases, how we would actually manage. You remember we were being criticized even on the ambulances we got. But you see, when you have someone who has COVID, they needed to go in a special ambulance, one where, you're protecting the people that are carrying and ferrying these people. So there were many things that we were learning all together. And, the one thing was some countries were closing down completely. Others were saying they open, let there be, let everybody catch it. Those that will die, those that don't, and, I wouldn't name those countries. But, we had to find a way of making sure, as the Constitution says, we safeguard lives. The various effects of the COVID-19 made various challenges. So one was health. The other one was food and water. So if you're going to now lock people up and areas, how will they eat? How will they, drink and so on? So the president divided us also into those committees. So we had one on food and water. There was another one to deal with the economy. There's another one to deal with security, and another to look at the post-COVID. What are we actually going to do? Because if the economy is going to tank, in which case there's no economic activity, how do we then manage and ensure that we maintain? Schools are being closed. How do we manage? How do we continue making payments? So a lot of things were going on, and I'm just giving that as a background as to some of the challenges we were looking at as government. We needed to make sure that we carried everybody with us so that, when we took decisions of ensuring that, we put, for instance, the curfews, we put in the lockdowns of some of the cities and so on, that was informed. So we were waiting also for, the World Health Organization to declare a pandemic. If they didn't declare a pandemic, you cannot stop flights. You cannot say that now Kenya will take care of its own. You have to manage and live within the overall rules of the international community. We're part of the international community, and therefore we must live with that. So we managed to spend time, and the first use of technology was, first of all, getting our hospitals, especially Kenyatta Hospital, in touch with the hospitals in Wuhan and hospitals in Italy, so that the doctors were all talking, talking about, what are they experiencing, what should we be doing to protect ourselves, and so on and so forth. We, listened to what they were advising, the personally protective equipment, the PPEs, which now everybody knows, and masks were key things that we needed to get. But as soon as the pandemic was announced, some countries decided they will not export. I think even India decided we could not even get medicine for all other things. Countries began to lock down, flights stopped. So we had those challenges, but over time, with the fact that we now had the technologies to use, we were able to then communicate, and begin to understand how to manage and deal with these challenges. Making sure everybody was informed of the situation was important. So we've had, I think since then, daily briefings on numbers and ensuring that as a country where we said we want to be open, we're providing all the necessary information. So technology has been at the heart of many of the things that we have done. Mercy has talked about how we've done the contact tracing, but contact tracing could not be done without even the mobile networks and the mobile phones. So, Safaricom and the other operators came in very handy. And really, I have to thank them for the support that they gave to the Kenyans, not just, it's not to the government, but to Kenyans, in ensuring, one, that people had access. And I think the first conversation I had even with Safaricom, the CEO said he's doubling the amount of bandwidth or bundles that people are getting so that they can be able to communicate and stay at home. Also, this helped in ensuring that people are not getting the right information. So other than the broadcasting information that was going out, there was also use of social media to ensure people are understanding. Today, we know more about COVID. At that time, we did not. So you didn't know what to do. Wash your hands, yes, do this. And as you're telling people now, they need to stay at home, work from home. Some employers were not agreeing to that. Others were saying, look, even the house helps, they don't want them to come. They will continue paying them, but they stay in their homes. Others, even their drivers, were working from home. So you had many, many changes. And I think even today, when I look at the number of people that have come on this call, we have got over 114, and they're from all over the country. One of the things that was being tested is our investment in infrastructure and in technology. And I have to say, the regulations that we put in place, the government investments, as well as the private sector investments, have shown that as a country, we are resilient and that we can be able to use the technologies to be able to continue both with business, education, and ensuring that everybody is informed in the things that they need to do. So we, as a committee, also started looking at what do we need to do to ensure that the economic impact is also not going to create an even bigger problem than the health problem that the pandemic was causing. The numbers were keeping on growing, but they were not rising as some of the countries out there. But we had to invest. We had to make sure we had enough beds, ICU beds, enough ventilators, in everything, across the counties, which required a lot of resources to make sure that that is done. We got a lot of support from some of the development partners, World Bank, and so on. And we were able to then ensure that we have got the right number of beds in the counties, also in the hotspot areas, Nairobi, there was Mombasa, and so on. So we found that to be able to make this work, we needed also the goodwill of Kenyans. And I have to say that majority of Kenyans really took time to actually protect not themselves, but also their neighbors. And actually, we're very proud as a government and as a country in the way this has been handled, even as much as bars are still closed. And we have seen people order, I think it's called a cargo special. That is 2 sausages and 5 beers. Even as people joke about some of these things, they've taken the serious issues and taken care of themselves, taken care of their families. People are wearing the masks. At some point, we didn't have access to masks. There were, we could not import because, flights had stopped and, countries were not manufacturing or releasing to other countries. So we started manufacturing here in the country. And so the industry also, grew. We started supporting even other countries. So some of our health workers went to some of the island countries really to help them in managing the pandemic. So we looked at this and as a team looked at the many things that we could do. Kazi Mtaani was one of the very important initiatives that needed to be put in place. There was others, the tax incentives that were put in place in ensuring that the tax that people were paying, the rates were reduced, in ensuring that, for the first time, instead of taking food to people, we would actually give them money And thanks to the operators, Safaricom, the cost of sending the money, and even those that had the Fuliza, for the first 48 hours, Safaricom would not take their money. You can't give people money for work and so on, and then Safaricom takes. And they were very generous in ensuring that, we are able to use the technology in giving people the support that they needed. And that meant that the economy in the local areas continued to grow and to thrive. You may not remember, but we were also having issues with the locusts at the time. We were having issues with floods. There were just very many different things going on. And I remember most people were saying, let's just cancel 2020 and remove it from the calendar. Too many challenges. But as a country and as a government, we made sure that we worked with everybody. And we looked at how other countries were implementing their strategies. And so far, I believe as a country, we've done extremely well. On the technology space, we have seen globally, companies are growing significantly. And even here in Kenya, many of the companies have seen their growth. Companies that were dealing with e-commerce, companies dealing with deliveries and so on and so forth, took off. Zoom globally actually grew by over 300%. They had revenues of over $328 million. Apple's market capitalization more than doubled to 2.3 trillion. That's more than the top 100 companies in the UK, the FTSE 100. So there's a lot of investment that has gone into the technology space because people have seen this is an area to grow and to continue. And so for us as a country, the preparations we had made in ensuring we have the national fiber optic cable and that we have fiber to the homes and so on. And really, I want to thank Kara that you supported us in ensuring that we're able to provide the fiber and connectivity to the homes. We work with the counties and with all the different people, but really at the end of the day, the residents associations mattered, because if they said they did not want the fiber, they did not want the connectivity, these things would not have happened. And you really as a community come together and ensure that the operators are coming and bringing these services. So we've seen that growth. In areas where we have not seen the demand, but there's still people that require services, the Communications Authority has the Universal Service Fund, which has been used to ensure that we're seeing more connectivity and services provided. We, at the same time, worked closely with the broadcasters, who I want to thank as well, other than informing citizens and making sure that the alerts, health alerts were being provided. They also started providing education classes. Most of the morning, if you went to the main stations, you would see they had programs for children, because all of a sudden, families now had their children at home, and some found out that they didn't know how to either educate them or the things that they need to do with them. The kids want to go out, and so the broadcasters came in to help in ensuring that they keep the children informed and also entertained and educated as we continue. We continued as government to ensure that we are taking the necessary steps to increase connectivity. So other than the Universal Service Fund, we worked closely with the Telecom Kenya and Loan to ensure that there's even balloons allowed in the country, so that we can see more growth of connectivity across the country. So, more 4G, looking at what we can do with TV white spaces, and many of these, because during this time, we also see a lot of growth in people working digitally. We have a program called Ajira Digital, where people can work for overseas and even local companies. We now have people transcribing the proceedings that are going on in the court here in the country. We have security officers who monitor CCTV for American companies that are based here. We have others who are, tagging parcels for some of the top, logistics companies in the world. So that area is actually growing and growing well. And we found that as a government, the services where we had digitized continued to grow and expand. On eCitizen, we have a lot of services that were in Huduma centers, but in cases where we had to close some of the Huduma centers because some of the COVID cases happened. People were still able to access quite a few services online. And we are happy as a government, we did not shut down. People were able to still access our services. And those needs of digitizing now have been expounded in a big way, even as Mercy has shown, to ensure that many of the initiatives that we're putting in now are being accelerated. So, services through e-Citizen, the Huduma number, which the delay is because we have a court process. It's not that we don't want to roll it out or we just registered people. We actually are happy to roll it out, but we're waiting for court process. The census was done electronically, and we have many other government services that are digital that we can talk about that some of your members were asking about. The digital literacy program has over 1.3 million tablets available, but the challenge we've had in saying that we use those for some of the students is that most of the kids are now at home, and you can't just educate them at home. You want to educate them in school, and even if you want to take them for exams, they haven't gone through classes. Now, with the numbers starting to decline, we expect that there may be a change in the policy as to when the schools will open, but that is something that is still in discussion, and we have to consult the experts to ensure that we have all that data to do it properly. In some countries where they've opened, you have seen a resurgence because the kids now take the COVID back home, and the crisis has been quite serious. In some cases, they've had to close again. So really, Mercy has addressed some of the dangers of people getting online. The cyberbullying, there's the hacking, but there's also other things that the different authorities are ensuring that we manage. We're now going into a different season, this political season, which has its own challenges. But we hope now, because people are much more aware of how to use technology, we may see better use of it even during the electoral process. So let me stop there. I know I can talk a lot. I minister ICT and youth affairs. So let me pause, and if there are going to be any questions, I can answer those. I have tried to respond to those that came through the remarks that I have made. So asanteni sana, and God bless.
Thank you very much, Waziri, for that very presentation. And indeed, looking at some of the questions that came through, most of them were directed to you, and you've actually addressed quite a number of them. So I'm sure people who asked the question have already gotten the response. So just look through and see if there's anything that might have left out. But basically, listening to the three presenters, it's clear that as a country, we've done quite a bit in terms of just trying to make use of technology to ensure that we are able to, one, fight the pandemic, but also take advantage of technology to continue with our daily lives. So there's so much the government has done, as you've heard from Masiri. There's so much that are in place in terms of planning, and we definitely are going to see a country that is completely transformed in terms of how we use technology and how we embrace new innovations to carry out our various activities. So with those three presentations, I'm sure we are now at a better place to understand what has been done, what is being planned, and how we can also be able to play a role. As I mentioned earlier, we had a number of questions coming through from participants. They sent advanced questions. We have shared some of these questions with the speakers. And now at this particular point where we are going to have a plenary session, I'm just going to go through some of the questions directed to each of the speakers, and then they can be able to respond to them before we look at maybe if there are any questions in the chat box, and maybe have one or two people ask questions on the platform. So I'm going to start with questions to Safaricom. Steve Chege is here with us. And we had a few questions directed to Safaricom. So let me read through them, and then Steve can respond. And then we'll go to questions that were directed to Wanjao of CAK. So the first question that came through for Safaricom was from Margaret Masibo, who was asking what has been the effectiveness of technology in addressing grassroots community challenges. So Steve, I'm sure you're able to respond to that. There's also another question from Shweb Adam, who was asking how can we use technology to collect crime statistics trends and put in place countermeasures against criminal activities and threats. We have Chacha Stanley, who asked, how can we use technology to address social rises? And then Shadrach Asioki asked, how beneficial has technology been amid the pandemic? I'm sure we've already had some of the benefits or some of the applications we've used technology addressed. We also have Vivon Magare, who was asking, what is the role of Safaricom in supporting organizations doing trainings in rural Kenya? And then the last question for Safaricom was from Robert Wita, who was asking, are there any offers, discounts on internet bundles or packages to individuals or small businesses leveraging on the internet to continue their business process? So those are the questions that were specifically directed at Safaricom. And Steve, I'm sure you'll be able to respond to them. So Steve, please take the floor.
Thank you once again, Henry, and very happy to address these questions. The first one was from Margaret. It was about what is the effectiveness of technology in addressing grassroots community challenges. I'll just cover something which I touched on earlier. In the course of the pandemic, we have used our platform, both the digital one and M-Pesa, to do quite a lot of things. One example which I can give in partnership with the government or assisting the government, we have ensured that every week we disperse close to $60 million to different households throughout Kenya. This goes directly to the community, and the method through which the recipients are selected is something which is covered by the relevant ministries. So here, technology is not, dancing around the issue. It is actually putting money directly into people's pockets, which can allow them to feed their children and to do something beneficial for the community. The data that the ministries use to be able to identify these people is based on the technology that we have, and of course the platform that is used to deliver the money. So I would suggest that as one very sort of clear example where technology can help to bridge issues in the community. Other examples I would give is we have a product called MTIBA, for example. MTIBA is a health insurance product where you can use savings that are made into your MTIBA wallet, the needy ones in society when they need medical attention. So technology is a big transformative tool in our technology in our communities. Shoaib, the issue was how can we use technology to collect crime statistics and trends and to help you put countermeasures. First, Shoaib, I hope you work for the right people, and by this I mean the security forces, because they would be the ones who can actually take countermeasures. But to answer your question, we address this in two ways. One, what have we done to help our security forces to be able to tackle crime? And two, what can individuals also do? So for the security forces, Safaricom has partnered with them over the years. I'm sure as you drive along Nairobi or Mombasa, you see some cameras flashing at you. Those cameras actually record a lot of information which goes to a central database and can be processed to help police be proactive in stopping crime. So this is an area that we've worked very closely with the government and the Ministry for Interior to ensure that we have empowered our law enforcement officers with 21st century technology to be able to capture events as they happen, to be able to investigate and to be more proactive in managing crime. For individuals, we have the opportunity to put CCTV cameras Kara, I know there's a few programs that we have done with a few estates where CCTV cameras have been installed. And the feed from these cameras is very important in terms of it being able to record what may have happened if something does go wrong. So individuals also can have a role to play in that regard. But to be clear, Shoaib, I think law enforcement should be the one that deals with crime. On our part, as residents and users of technology, we can assist them in this regard. Chacha Stanley, he asked, how can we use technology to address social vices? This was a difficult question for me to get an answer to, because, you know, technology can do many things, but it can't do everything, which is a mistake that we make in the modern world, that, you know, technology can solve a lot of things. Sometimes technology is the problem. But in this case, what I could refer you to, Stanley, is the fact that certain platforms have been created that can help to address social vices. For example, for people who need counseling or people who are in a certain state of medical condition, if they need intervention, it is possible to use different platforms to get them the help that they need, so that you know, things don't go too bad. There are platforms such as one which is run by AMREF, and this platform can be used to report different kind of things that are happening and allow AMREF rescuers to come and attend to the situations. For online activities, we have many platforms that exist that actually give the right kind of information and guidance to our young people about what to do on the internet, what not to do, what to do if they're being bullied, and how to position themselves in terms of the names and the information that they put out to prevent them from becoming victims of online bullying or other harassment. So I hope that addresses your query, Stanley. Shadrach, you asked how beneficial has technology been in this pandemic? We want to believe, since we come from the technology world, that we have been extremely beneficial. For example, now we're able to meet, I don't know how many people in this call, and, you know, without physically come to one location, but this is just happening, and the feed is going to so many different people. Technology has done a lot. It has actually made it possible for things that would have stopped at this point in time to still keep on going on. And the examples are there, and there are many. We have, you know, we've covered them between myself, the DG, and the minister. But these examples are something which we as technology companies are hoping will stay. That's why at the beginning of this address, I said, we are going to invest heavily in fiber to the home and fiber to the building. And what we want to do is make you feel comfortable at home to be able to work, to be able to stream what you want to stream, whether it's entertainment. If it's school, you'll be able to, you know, go through a lecture in as easy a manner as we are speaking right now, and basically continue with your life. These are things that we believe will start moving us forward in an economic and significant way. And I'm sure the minister would agree with me on that. There was a question from Bivon Magare. What is the role of Safaricom in supporting organizations doing trainings in rural areas? So Bivon, this is an area which I can speak about for a very long time, because I personally sponsor the vocational training arm within Safaricom Foundation as a trustee of the Safaricom Foundation. But this is what I'll say about education and our reach into the different communities. One, we do this through the Safaricom Foundation. One of the pillars of the Safaricom Foundation is education. Under that pillar, we cover numeracy and literacy. This is the ability of children to learn and to actually be able to do the things that a different grade says they can do. You'd be shocked that certain parts of Kenya, a student who is in Form 4 may not be able to write as well as a student who's in Standard 6 in some schools. So what we are doing is retooling how teachers are teaching these children so that the numeracy and literacy levels are actually good at a younger level, and these benefits carry forward as they go into high school, then into tertiary education or university. The other arm is vocational training. At Safaricom Foundation, what we have done is set up one, which is going to be an example of many, vocational training center that is going to be equipped and to become a digitally fast education center. This is going to be opened in the next few months if COVID allows. And what we're doing with this, together with the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development and the TVET authorities, is to ensure that TVET is done in a correct way in this country. A lot of people go for white-collar jobs, but the opportunity in blue-collar jobs is really, really extensive. And what we need to do is give our young people the right skills. And this is the program that we are doing. We're doing it in all the counties in Kenya, but we have selected certain streams to start the work with as we plan to roll out to different parts of the country. So Safaricom is doing a lot to look at education, apart from the supporting the education initiatives by the ministry, making sure that you can access all the KICD approved curriculum materials for free, which we have done. We are also doing specific things around literacy, numeracy, and vocational training. Robert Muya says, any offers, discounts on internet bundles, packages to individual small businesses leveraging on the internet to continue their business processes. So Robert, when COVID happened, started in around March, what we did is we made sure that SMEs are still able to work. The way we look at SMEs, it could be me, Steve, here, I'm in the office. Then later on, I go home and I'm doing something else. Maybe I'm rearing chicken or I'm doing some, farming. The thing is, what we wanted to make sure is that you could still be able to do that. And what we did is, if you had a connection with Safaricom, we doubled the bandwidth that you had for free. This meant what? You didn't need to come to the office. Even if you had an office of 3 or 4 people, the capacity that we gave was enough for work to continue. And this is support that was direct. And we've gotten a lot of feedback from our SMEs asking us to continue with it and to keep on giving them the support. Because the one thing you don't want during a time like this when you're looking for customers is for you not to have the means to be able to reach them. So we bridged that gap for them. For individuals, we did different things around M-Pesa, around Bonga points, and other things. So we feel as Safaricom, we have done a significant contribution. The minister touched on health, and I didn't go too much into that, but if I could right now, what I'd like to say is this: we have ensured that every Kenyan has access to COVID information if they need it. We have a 24/7 call center with 300 staff manned every day of the week who are able to provide information around this. Beyond this, we partnered with doctors, so you can actually have your call directed to a medical doctor to explain to you this. We've partnered with the ministry around contact tracing, which is very sophisticated kind of work, basically to ensure that if there's an incidence of COVID, it is tracked. So we've done a lot of things, some of them very quiet, but a lot of them are supporting our individuals, small and medium enterprises, and of course, all aspects of government where we have been able to help. So Henry, I think that covers my questions, and I'll hand over back to you.
Thank you very much, Steve. Thank you, Steve, for the response. I'm sure people who ask the questions are satisfied, and we've also been able to learn quite some more from that particular response. So I'm going to go straight to the questions that were asked to the Education Authority of Kenya, and Madam Wanjao will be able to respond to them. The first question was from Sujit Shah, who asked the question: whenever money is sent from Safaricom number using M-Pesa to an Airtel number, the money has to be physically withdrawn within 7 days or automatically get sent back to the sender. Can CAK make this procedure easier and reduce the risk of cash handling during this digital era by allowing the money to automatically sit in the Airtel Money account of the recipient without the option of withdrawal within 7 days? Quite a long question, but I'm sure Madam Manja will be able to respond to that. Question number 2 was from Joseph Kioko, who was asking, how can communication networks be strengthened in order to enable access to virtual classes by all learners in the country? Another question was from Mwangi, who asked, what efforts has government made to bring down the cost of airtime and bundles, as it appears there's no change, especially during this COVID-19 period? Adrian Mudomi asked what frameworks are available to create awareness, encourage and attract the private sector to get into and run on e-business and e-commerce. Stephen Okech asked, what's the government doing to enhance more cyber security, curb cases of fraud and cyberbullying? I think the DG was very extensive on this in her presentation. So this is more or less answer, but she can still touch on it. Michael Obiambo also asked the question, more uptake of internet usage in homes as a result of the corona pandemic, therein lies the risk of radiation exposure, Wi-Fi based modems, and routers being used for extended periods in homes, especially seen as a risk factor to infant and young children. Are there any guidelines that could be proposed to help minimize such risks? So those are the questions directed to CAK, and Madam DG should now take the floor and respond to them. Karibu.
Okay. Thank you very much, Henry, for those questions. Starting off with a question from Sujit Shah on the issue of the time duration for money within the wallets. This was the situation up until 2018, after which the authority was able to implement the wallet-to-wallet interoperability. And that meant that it is now possible to move money from one wallet to another within the interoperability framework, which makes for ease of use and access to these funds, and also enables one to transfer money. Obviously, this is a feature that is now very useful in this season, because those kind of movements were not there before, and also the enhanced possibility to safely withdraw money from the agents. So you find that actually now there are many possibilities. The movement from wallet to wallet, transfer and access the hard cash, if one wants to access the hard cash through an agent, or to actually move it from within the platform. This situation has since resolved. Then the next question was from Joseph Kioko, asking about how networks can be strengthened in order to enable access to virtual classes to all learners. As I indicated earlier, we are aware that unfortunately not all learners have the benefit of some of the services that are being availed during a pandemic season. And this really creates the need to adopt and close these gaps as quickly as possible, so that there's an inclusive approach for all learners. But for those who do have, we do recognize that a journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step, and that for those who are on the platforms, that we are able to access content at good value and good quality. I think Steve spoke to some of the initiatives that they are having with KICD in terms of access. As the authority, we have also collaborated heavily with KICD to ensure the digitization of curriculum at primary school and secondary school level, and also the radio lessons and the TV lessons, that this would avail content so that even in the absence of a teacher or an instructor, there is a new initiative that would enable learning and instruction to take place. CS Moshero did mention about the Universal Service Fund administered here at the authority. This is the fund that is tasked with the commitment to bridge the gap in unserved areas and underserved areas. These areas are likely to happen in poor urban areas and far-flung rural areas, where you will find that the network access still is not 100% in terms of coverage, that we will be able to close that. And this would also ensure that we're able to close access also to radio and television as some of the mainstream points of access for populations in Kenya. In doing so, we do hope that then this will be a conversation of the future in time. And we are actually embarking on our phase 2 connectivity project for voice, which will once more extend efforts to close gaps where there is no connectivity, particularly in the northern part of Kenya, coming towards the southern side, that we would be able to include these populations on a 100% coverage basis. Then Mwangi indicated that it seems that there's no change in pricing. I believe Steve addressed that issue, that there have been quite a number of initiatives that have been put in place to allow for access of data bundles. I am aware, for example, there have been initiatives to address, let me call them special groups, like schools, universities, where access to these websites has been enabled and made very cheap, because these websites have been whitelisted. And the case of websites with learning information have also been whitelisted so that it allows for much cheaper access to those kind of facilities to ensure learning. And also there have been quite a number of initiatives by operators in terms of bundles, increasing the bundle amount against the amount of money paid, that would ensure that consumers are able to use the same resource for longer. Then Adrian Mudhoni asked, what are the frameworks that have been put in place to encourage and attract private sector to get into and run e-business and e-commerce? We view the possibilities on e-commerce to be a real game changer for us. As a young nation with a budding youth population that is very well aware of ICTs and has the access to digital skills, indeed, we are very, very well placed to leverage on this. Looking at some of the policy documents, like the digital economy blueprint, it really envisages a situation that the gig economy would grow and deepen and be formalized, that we would have people actually getting online jobs that are meaningful, that pay meaningfully. And this way it would allow us to open up our opportunities for the world and engage to improve livelihoods and provide goods and services. The e-business and e-commerce platform also has an advantage in the sense that the barriers to entry are way lower than they would be if one had to set up a shop on brick and mortar, and is something we are very committed to promoting. In order to enhance this and enable this, the ministry is currently on a program to promote the national addressing system. And this would ensure that even as that space opens up and allows for delivery of goods to homes, that there would be clarity in terms of addressing on the ground, because without an addressing system or a clear and effective system that is universally understood, that constraint would be taken care of and would be addressed. Of course, the concerns around cyber security, protection of data, prevention of identity theft and the like remain a constant commitment, because you cannot have a thriving e-commerce ecosystem if there's no trust and confidence online. And that is a commitment that we exist to promote, because it is very much at the foundation of the growth of e-business and e-commerce. I believe that also goes to answer the question by Stephen Okech that was on cybersecurity and how we address them. Going to the last question was about the cost of internet and what is the impact of having Wi-Fi based modems in homes and the impact on health. Now, when it comes to charging of cost of internet, there are formulas that are put in place to determine the cost based on GDP of a country, and based on that is how the costing in Kenya has been arrived at. Maybe I should correct the impression that actually Kenya has the most expensive internet in Africa. This is not the case. There are other countries that have way more expensive internet, but this is not to say that efforts are not underway to make sure the costs come down. One of the ways being that by increasing the spread and access to broadband in Kenya, the economies of scale will naturally bring down the costs because of the mass uptick that we expect. And then lastly, on the issue of any guidelines with regard to health impacts on Wi-Fi, is to mention that Kenya subscribes to the International Commission on Non-Ionizing Radiation Protection Guidelines. These are guidelines that actually are formally adopted by many countries in the world, and we are closely guided by them to ensure that even with continued use and access to ICTs in Kenya, we are also able to promote safe and responsible use of them to protect particularly young populations and the impact that this would have on them. I think from my list, I have addressed the questions, and I really thank you very much for this engagement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gigi, for the response. I'm sure you've done justice to the questions that were directed to you. So majority of the questions were directed to the CS. And like I said, during this presentation, I think you did responded to some of them. So maybe I'm just going to pick a few, maybe that the CS can go deeper and be able to respond to, and then we go to the next phase. So let me just read a few questions that were directed to the CS. Like I said, there were quite a lot. So the first one was from Humphrey Odhiambo, who asked what has been the accelerated uptake of using emerging innovations such as blockchain to keep up with the pace of new normal. So was he able to respond to that? And then there was also one from Luku Mutua, who was asking if there are any mapping solutions in place for residential areas. And perhaps this can be tied to the aspect of national system that Madam Gigi has talked about. There was another question by Mwangi, who was asking public universities remain unprepared to use technology offering online learning. And are there any plans to address this particular challenge? Then there was one from Brian Murini, who asked, how will Ajira be of benefit to those without smartphones? We have Caroline Simba, who asked that COVID-19 has amplified the digital divide, especially for learners in rural areas. What solutions are available to bridge this gap in the short term? We also have Professor Oluchiri, who asked what technology opportunities are there for managing learning programs during the COVID-19 period. We have Salim Wanahawa, who was asking how is the COVID fund benefiting the Mwananchi at the grassroots level in terms of technology? And then Samba Nixon was asking if we can deploy unmanned aerial vehicles, popularly known as drones, for responding to pandemics. I'm sure the CS was able to respond to that. And then Collins had a question and was asking, how do we deal with public health misinformation, hoaxes, and conspiracy theories being spread through the digital platforms in light of the pandemic? And then he also wanted to know how do we enhance the link between governance, technology, and citizen behavior during the pandemic period? And then we had another question from Stephen Okech, who wanted to know how technology can be utilized to create more employment opportunities during this period when many people have lost their livelihoods. Easter Achien has asked, how do we engage offsite with people living with disabilities and rural communities who have limited access to appropriate technology? And then there was Judy Mulinge, who was asking what measures have the government put in place for public servants to embrace technology in their day-to-day activities, as well as provide room for working from home. Benjamin Bella asked opportunities that youth can leverage during this pandemic to make a living out of the vast technology. And then we had a question from Peter Mbesi, who was asking what policies the government has put in place to push on the SMEs from the adverse effects of pandemic. There's a question from Paul, who was asking any updates on the Google loans and when they will be available in Nairobi. Michael Odhiambo wanted to know what long-term plans are in place to engage power sector like Kenya Power, work hand in hand technology sector. In prioritizing rural electrification, that's increasing use of technology in far-flung areas during the pandemic. Then we had David Kithekia, who asked, are there any practice in our development experience which we can draw on as we consider mitigation strategies against the pandemic risk? And then there was Joseph Kamau, who wanted to know how fast the government is going to adopt the integrated secure government cloud computing infrastructure, support government agencies to work remotely. So the questions are quite a lot, but I'm sure the CS has been able to go through them and they should be able to make a quick go at them. And then thereafter, we might pick a few. I can see our chat box is also having a lot of questions. Maybe in the interest of time, we'll just pick a few, and then the rest we'll put aside and share with our speakers. You can give a response, and then we are able to share them back with the participants. But for now, let me invite the CS just to make a quick response to the question that I raised, and then we can move to the next phase. So, Waziri Karim.
Thank you very much, Henry, for that. I'm glad the first question is not, is there COVID? Because I've been seeing that in the media and people, questioning and almost claiming that this is something that doesn't exist. It's been real, and we've been learning with it. And let me start with Humphrey's question. What has been the accelerated uptake of using emerging innovations such as blockchain to keep up with the pace of the new normal? When I left the private sector and joined the government, I came with a lot of excitement and determination to move things forward. And especially when there are new technologies, new things, we want to adopt them and we want to move with them very fast. And then I met Omutata. I think you guys know Omutata. And various other people. So anything that we're doing takes policy, takes regulation, takes public participation, consultation. So many of the things that we want to do, for instance, Huduma number, that is all on blockchain with top of the art security in the background, ensuring that the work is being done by Kenyans. We want to make sure that we are securing our data, citizen data. These are things that are important to us. But to do all those things means as government, we have to go through a lot of process. So a lot is being done. When we look at what I've said with the Huduma number, the work that we did even on census, the records that are there are immutable. So people won't be able to then change records. You have that information. And we've continued to build on technologies we've had. When you looked at IFMIS, which is our financial management system that we ran through Treasury, that has expanded. It's being used in many of the different counties, the national government, and now we are in the process of ensuring that even the state corporations are also using the same platforms, even for procurement. I think one of the challenges that we have, other than bringing in these new technologies, is that yes, we need to ensure that the civil servants are also trained. The public servants know what what we're trying to achieve and ensure that they're able to use. Also that they also protect themselves. Security is also a big area that has been a concern. So our aim is to ensure that even as we take the new technologies, we roll them out with speed, but we do it with consultation, we do it carefully, and ensure that we're able to roll out. The digital literacy program project, this is the laptop project, which I'm seeing is also one of the key questions here. It took us more than 3 years just to get the tender out because of all the legal processes. We've done the first round. We've installed, at least in all the schools, all the primary schools, about 1.3 million devices. But because of the competency-based curriculum that now is being introduced, we have to have a different model in how we roll out the program. We've obviously had to make sure we carry the different groups of people who have their different views, whether we should see or we should not. So a lot of that makes it sometimes challenging for us, who I see the ministry almost like the IT department. As is to, once everybody has agreed, tunaenda hivi, as we come in and implement. So there's been some questions on some of those areas. And once that's completed, we expect that we will roll out on all these devices, ensuring that we're digitizing. The universities and even the schools, we built with KICD. This is the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development and Education Cloud. We've already built a significant amount of connectivity to all the universities, plus some of the secondary schools through the Kenya Educational Network, KENNET. And the idea is that we want to make sure the whole education system is going to be digitized, and that people will have not only access to online courses that they can use, but they will be able to then even mark and do many things and interacting with their teachers. The current challenge is that not everybody has had a device. And because we want to make sure we're carrying everyone, then we don't just start for some, and we haven't provided others, because we find ourselves being challenged and all that. So the key thing is that we are investing, we're working with help to make sure that even those that can afford to buy the devices, they can. And with the Education Cloud, we're making sure all the right content is being put in place for people to be able to access. Those that don't have smartphones, and sorry, I'm just going through the questions. I wasn't able to write them and all the names of the people that are asking quickly enough. I've been sent like 3 screens of different questions, so bear with me that I'm just going to answer as they come. That there are those who don't have smartphones and still want to be able to work online. You'll be happy to know that in partnership with the CDF, these are the members of parliament, as well as the MasterCard Foundation, we now have over 300 what we're calling Ajira Youth Empowerment Centers, where we're providing free Wi-Fi, we're providing devices where the people can actually go and work from. Because of COVID-19, we did not open them, but we've hired managers and interns that are in those centers. And soon, once we have the go-ahead to open these spaces, then people who do not have these devices will have ability to book and access these centers, where they will be able to have equipment that they can actually use. We are doing this because we want to make sure that across the whole country, everybody has the ability to work. And really, once you've started earning using the public sites that we've given, we expect you'll buy your own device and you can actually work from home. The network providers have continued to roll out and expand the networks and make them more affordable. Many of the questions I was being asked on the cost of connectivity and the availability have both been answered by Steve and Mercy Wanjau. So I will not go into those, but I will say Telecom Kenya are the ones that are rolling out the Loon project. Loon are balloons that are about 60 feet up in the air, and they will give up a footprint of about 80 kilometers where you can have 4G services. At the moment, they have tested it is working. We launched that with His Excellency the President in Baringo, which is a rural area. And the services are actually available in many parts of the country at the moment, but they're seeing as a telecom 4G service, and only if you've access from them will you be able to access the services. Obviously, Safaricom is your sponsor here, and I'm not sure how Steve is taking me saying this, but you know, Telkom should have come here to work with you and partner with you. They are not. Safaricom is here. Primarily, they should be the ones announcing on many of these products that are coming in. As government, we create an enabling environment so that there is competition and people can be able to communicate. I would hope that Telkom is now going to take time to also go out and start educating the citizens on how they can use the service. The COVID-19 fund is not a government fund. This is a private fund with a private board, and they are the ones that determine how the money is used and what direction it's used. We do not have any engagement or involvement with what they do. I know they have bought PPEs for the health workers, they have bought masks, they've been looking at how to support food and a few other things, but they have not come to us on issues of technology yet. And so far, they're not required to reference the government. And that is why it's a public, well, it's a private fund, not a government one or public one. And so to that extent, I'm not able to give answers on that. Our ability to respond to the pandemic is also, geared with all the learnings we're having from other countries, from other experts. We are consulting, we're working together. We're part of the United Nations, we're part of the WHO, and therefore we share a lot of information together with many people in order to be able to ensure that as Kenya, we're getting the best. So we are working with everybody to ensure that, we provide timely, but also important information to everybody to be able to harness and address the pandemic. Fake news and all this information that is going out, for instance, that there's no COVID or that it was invented so that people can't campaign and so on and so forth. I think to some degree, we have made sure that any information that is going out from government, we actually have a clear logo. If you see CS Kagwe, where he stands and where he speaks, and also his team, we have a clear banner and the media have come and there. You can hear the information directly from there. Some of these other information that comes out in terms of fake news or hate speech and so on and so forth are, also to some degree pandemics that we have to deal with every day. Some of the comments that were made recently about different people, including the president, are part of now, unfortunately, what we are seeing here in this country. That we've lost even decency. People will give people fake news, and really Steve will explain to you that every day people are being conned on M-Pesa. They're being conned on many things where they're giving even their PIN numbers and so on. So our job with the Communications Authority is to ensure we're educating citizens as much as possible and providing the necessary information so that we do not have this whole issue of people being subject to a lot of fake news and are not being able to address. There's a lot of social media things. All I can say to you all is, just verify any of the information or any of the facts that are coming out. Don't just take action and listen to many of the people who are warning about some of the changes. In order for public servants to work from home, the regulations or requirements, the head of public service sent out a circular that first of all told anyone who are 58 to go and work from home, and everyone else, within the ministry, we found ways of ensuring that government services continue and that we can even still be able to work from home. A case in point, we had cabinet this morning, but here I am working from my home office, thanks to bandwidth provided by Safaricom, which I pay for. It's not for free. Steve is not that generous in ensuring that we get that. But right now, public servants are free to be able to work from home. And we've actually found that this is a very efficient and a good way to be able to work. And I think going forward, we are going to see adoption of this way of working in the country. We also have within the Ministry of Education, We will have specific subjects, at least 4 subjects are going to be done online going forward. Even when we open and children go back to school, the aim is to ensure that this habit of people now being able to use technology to work will become a part of everyday life. In my previous life in the private sector where I worked at Google, this is the way we worked. We worked using video conferencing and all the shared documents and so on, because this was working across the world. And I think as a country, we can leapfrog, and to some degree it's already happening, and ensure that we're being able to provide the opportunities for people to work using these technologies. I've already covered the Google loan. On the electrification, which is what the government calls the last mile project, we've moved from about 2 million households connected now to over 7 million households. The president is very determined to make sure that everyone in the country will actually gain access to electricity, access to light, because really without it, there's a very big divide. If there's no electricity, you cannot begin to use some of these technologies we're talking about. You have to go very far to be able to even charge your phones for communication. And so the Ministry of Energy is not only working on ensuring the grid reaches people, it's also looking at the solar powered solutions. Many of the schools that we were connecting with the digital literacy program have solar solutions as well, because the grid has not reached there. So we are able to take advantage of the fact that the cost of solar solutions has significantly come down, and we can be able to provide electricity. The strategies and plans that we're putting in place, we have teams of both government and private sector and academia people, the experts, working together really to put together the policy strategies that we can put in place to ensure that we fully benefit from the key opportunities that COVID is posed for us. We are seeing that a lot of investment continues in the country from the operators, but also during this time, we have seen that when we've been able to work with, for instance, the homeless families, the president has been working with them in places like Grogan, where they're building roads, they're creating the hygiene and working. They can begin to create their own companies, which are called community companies, and we'll use them for construction of roads. We'll use them for hygiene and many of the things that are required. So the future of Kazi Mtaani is being able to work with these people even in future, so that when we are having road projects, housing projects, whatever projects, that we have them engaged. We have seen that during a time of this, like this, where we have a pandemic, countries actually lock down and they stop us from buying anything. And they take prices of things to almost 10-20% of what they should be. And when the costs are so high and you have no access, it becomes a problem. So we as government have said we are going to put proper measures to ensure we support Kenya. We build Kenya, we buy Kenya, so that even if something is more expensive, but it is Kenyan made and it will build our industry, and that it will build, it will create the jobs that are necessary, we will actually focus on ensuring that that is the case. Yes, we're having bilateral discussions with the UK, with the US on how we can create free trade areas, but local manufacturing and all these important things that we need to do to produce our own goods. We should produce our own toothpicks, but at the moment they're imported. Why? Because those ones maybe are coming cheaper. We'll find ways of ensuring that as a country, the policies we're putting in place will actually grow our industries and jobs. Let me end with the last question, which you have not mentioned, but this one of Kazi Mtaani, that some people have not been paid. It is true, there is some people, it's actually a very small number that have not been paid, and they will be paid. But the challenge is when your name and your ID and your number are not the same. If we pay you, we will be locked up because they will say we are paying fake people or ghost workers. Right now, we have to follow very clear protocols on how payments are being done, how people are being recruited. So whereas, this is a process we've done for the first time and are improving on how it will work, there is no intention of people not being paid. Majority have been paid, and there's maybe one or two who have not received payment, but they have received communication why there is that challenge. And I think once that's resolved, and especially working closely with the Nyumba Kumi, of which most of your members are also part of, then as a community, we're able to ensure that the right people are being paid this money and that they're doing the work and that we're able to move forward. Henry, I hope I've been able to answer at least some of the questions that were asked. There were many that were asked. And I'll be happy to make sure that with the questions that have been asked, we'll write responses back so that you will have a written response within the next few days for everyone to have, and they can be able to ask more if they want. I think this shouldn't be a one-off engagement. We should be able to continue this kind of discussion. I know you're busy, you're probably going to meet with all other ministries, but for us with technology, we can continue to answer questions if there are any. Asante sana.
Thank you very much, Wajiri. Done justice to the questions, and I'm sure the people who ask the questions are satisfied with the responses. And like I mentioned, our chat box is quite busy with a number of questions. And I know that if we are to go through all those questions, we might end up leaving here at 7 or even 8 o'clock. So what we will do is that, like Waziri has said, we'll share all these questions with all the presenters, and then they'll be able to give their response, which we can then be able to share with the participants. But what we've done is that we just picked one question for each speaker that we think was not addressed at all in any of the presentations. So maybe just one for each of them, they can respond to it, and then now the rest will share with them, and they can be able to respond to us whenever they are able to do that, and then we'll share with the rest of you. So for Steve, there is a question that I think maybe you need to just touch on briefly. And the one is on, there's a discussion going on in regards to 5G, and we need to have some light shed on this. And of course, people to know more about it. So Steve will just respond to that briefly. And then for Waziri, I think there's one question that perhaps you can be able to give a quick response to. The question goes, since the kids are at home, does the government have a plan to engage them to study through online platforms? The suggestion is, can you set a one ICT stop center where an array of teachers have different subjects in specific time slots, and students can create accounts and access the lessons and possibly have an interactive session? And then I think you also perhaps will be able to respond to this question. What is the government's commitment to promoting access to technology of persons with various forms of disability? And they're saying that even this forum has no sign language. And then for Madam DG, there's one question here. Do you have plans to equip government agencies offering services to enhance cybersecurity skills? Those are just questions we picked from the chat box. There are quite a number of them. We can't go through all of them. But I thought that if we can be able to have just a quick, brief response from each of you on the questions, then we can now close up. So Steve, could you please just take up the first question, please?
Okay, Henry, just to confirm, the question was around 5G.
Yeah, the question is, there's a discussion going on in regards to 5G. So we just want to know more about it, where it has reached, what are the plans in place and all that.
Okay, so this is a technology question, and one which unfortunately has suffered from this COVID period, because there's been a lot of controversy and, you know, misinformation that has been put out there. 5G is just the same as 4G. It's just the same as 3G, it's just the same as 2G. What tends to happen in the telecommunication space is that after we were able to make calls and send SMS, the development of the technology that we use has actually almost doubled in capability as the years go by. So that's why we had something called 2G, which we were using in 2006, 2007. We got 3G. And then for some of us, 3 or 4 years ago, we started using 4G. So these technologies are just these Gs are just a way of identifying a technology that allows consumers to access a service. 4G allows speeds of up to 80 to 100 Mbps in a perfect scenario. This is a lot of speed coming through, directly to your devices. 5G will enable that to actually double. You'll be getting speeds that are so high. And the use cases for 5G right now in the world is a lot of these robotics or businesses that need to run 24/7. They can be architectured around 5G. Now, the issue that has come in society is that 5G is bad, 5G makes you sick, 5G is a cover-up for COVID and all these kind of things. The thing is, it uses the same frequencies that have been licensed to operators by the communications authorities. It uses different antennas because, of course, the technology is different from 4G. But beyond that, any deployment of any service in Kenya has to be approved by the Communications Authority, by NEMA, by the Radiation Board, by all the different regulators that we have in Kenya. And there's no way that those bodies would allow a technology to be deployed that is, inherently harmful. This is the same in Europe, this is the same in America. But what we have seen as operators is that 5G has gotten a notion around it that is a bit interesting. You never had anyone complaining when we went to 4G. But now when we go to when you hear we're migrating to 5G, you hear a lot of this noise. So it is something we as operators are dealing with. We're taking opportunities like this where we can interact and speak to customers and users about what the technology really is. It is still deployed in the same way. We have a tower with an antenna connected with fiber back to our base stations. And that's really what it is. In the written responses that we're going to share with you, Henry, I'll give a more detailed explanation of what the technology is, what the technology is not, and what the technology might bring in terms of benefits to us as users.
Thank you very much, Steve. I think that is well articulated. So, Madam Digi, do you want to just do a brief response?
Henry, I'm so behind in terms of time. Is it possible I just answer mine and Mercy will allow me to answer before her? This is one of those occasions you ask to go before a lady. But I have a group of people who've been waiting, and I thought this was going to be half an hour. We've taken 2. So I really apologize, but please allow me to answer the 2 questions that you had presented, if that is okay.
Okay, that's okay.
That's okay.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, Mercy. So first, the key challenge we're having with the schools is not whether we have the content. Actually, the content is being developed. We even have a school broadcasting service where you can use radio, you can use TV, and this is being made available to the students everywhere. The problem we currently have is that not everyone has access to a device. And because they don't have access to a device, even if we make the content centrally available and the teachers are training, we still have a significant number of our students not being able to use this service. And really, we can't have just a small part of the country or small number of students being able to get these services and a huge number don't have. That creates an even bigger digital divide. So this is the challenge we've been grappling with the Ministry of Education. We've worked with the operators to see if we can have at least universal 4G coverage across the country so that people can be able to work even from and study from their homes. And really the push that we're trying to work on right now, because we are not able to get a device to every student in their home in time and securely, is really to see what is going to be the best way of opening the schools quickly enough so that the education can continue. But we will ensure that going forward, as one of the key strategies, is to ensure that everyone has access to a device that they can use in being able to both learn and receive the education and also be taught and collaborate within the education sector. In the programs that we're putting in place, we take into account people with disability, whether it is visual, in terms of visual challenges, or whether it is hearing. So many of the centers where we've put in infrastructure. That is one of the key initiatives that we put in to ensure that we carry everyone with us. Unfortunately, it's still a work in progress, so it's not everywhere that this has been implemented. We have very clear targets within government to ensure that we're meeting all these targets and requirements. So I will respond in more detail, as Steve has also suggested, in giving you examples of where these technologies are being used to help people with disability, and ensuring that we're informing them of the many opportunities that are there and how we can even work with them. For instance, on the court process and transcription, we have some of the people there who really, they even have more skills in hearing what people are saying and transcribing. So this is an area that is important for us as government, and we will continue to work hard to ensure we meet the requirements. So thank you all, and thank you, Henry. I really do beg to be excused. I would have loved to continue the conversation, but time is not on my side. Asante sana.
Thank you very much, Waziri, and for joining us. So we ask Madam Digi just maybe take a minute or so, and then we can respond to the question.
Okay, thank you very much, Henry. The question was, are there any plans to equip staff from government agencies with cybersecurity skills? This is a very topical question because when we talk about powering this country towards digital transformation, one of the main stakeholders at the center of that will be the staff who actually work within these agencies, because government is one of the biggest users of ICTs in any country, and we regard them. And just about 4 or 5 weeks ago, we actually had an engagement with ICT officers countrywide on what the implications are of the move from working in offices to working from home for government. And we had the first of a series of continuing engagements, firstly because the public servant or the civil servant is a first point of contact with the citizen. So they need to be aware, they need to be well equipped as to be able to assure, give confidence and information to the citizen who asks this question and wants to be availed of more information. Secondly, that worker is also the point of contact when it comes to government delivery of service, or government to citizen delivery of service. As far as public service is concerned, this then becomes very critical in terms of empowerment and the provision of information. Thirdly, government is the biggest holder of data in this country. Data, some of which is very, very sensitive. So obviously this person would need to be very well aware as to treat and handle the data that they have in their hands with the integrity that it deserves. So all I'm saying is that, yes, there are a lot of plans, a lot of work is underway to ensure that the civil servant or the public servant is able to engage in a very resourceful manner, empowering the digital ecosystem. And this will be done by backing them up with the access to information and capacity building to make sure that this happens. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the response. Ladies and gentlemen, I think this is a very exciting discussion, and we certainly needed to have more time to just go through all the questions. But as you can see, we've actually overshot our time, and we certainly have to close. We will make sure that the responses to these questions are received and can share them with you through our various communication channels and platforms. And of course, if there are any for clarification, make sure that either Safaricom or CAK or the ministry provide that clarification. So from the discussion, there's certainly need for joint collaboration between the various actors and of course communities. And as you can see, we're already working with Safaricom. We definitely are going to look out for CAK and the ministry just to see how we can be able to partner and collaborate to ensure that some of these good initiatives are actually community-driven and get their space within the community. And for now, I just want to take this opportunity to thank Safaricom once again for agreeing to work with us, this initiative. And we are going to have a series of these kind of platforms looking at different topical issues. And we request that when we invite you to join us, please join us, because this is not just an opportunity to learn, but also to understand what kind of role you can play to be involved in some of these initiatives by the private sector, the government, and of course, other actors. So from us as CARA, I want to thank all of you for joining us this afternoon and for staying on up to this particular moment. We promise that next time we'll make sure that we finish before time, not on time, so that people can able to do other things. So thank you very much, and God bless you. And you are now free to log out of the meeting. Asanteni sana.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and the panelists.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Asante.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
much. Thank you. Big appreciation.
Asanteni sana. Na Mungu awabariki.
Goodbye, all.
Thank you.
You.
It was very interesting.
Kwani lazima kila mtu aseme thank you. Ndio. Lazima bwana.
Mtu aseme asante, ajulikana alikuwa kwa mkutano.
Ajili nashikilia namba yangu.
Amepotea.
Asanteni sana.
Ni bamba tu ameziba.
Kwenye hapo hizi.